Gurv Margaret, firstly, Cian O'Callaghan, I just want to talk about the human impact of the failures that's happening on housing at the moment. And to give an example of a family who've been in touch with me recently who are going to be evicted on the 2nd of June, will be evicted into homelessness, have been looking for a property to move into in terms of that would accept their HAP payment and simply cannot get that. I have a second family in touch with me, similar circumstances, who have been evicted into homelessness. It's their second time becoming homeless. And these are families that have done everything they can to avoid this, and actually who in other countries, other European countries, wouldn't be becoming homeless. These are families that, renting in the private rent sector, pay their rent on time. We're surrounded by other countries where if you pay your rent on time, you will not be evicted. You will not be evicted into homelessness. And yet, because this government has failed to act to protect renters from homelessness, we've people becoming homeless, which is totally avoidable. Totally avoidable. I want to mention one thing before progressing, and that's, I've raised with the Minister several times the issues around Gaeltacht areas. There's a specific proposal from Cunran na Gaeilge in their National Policy for Housing in the Gaeltacht just to reinstate the housing grant that was in place since 1929 and was abolished in 2009 by the then Fianna Fáil government during the time of the recession. It was in place for most of the history of the state, and the Minister should use the powers under Act na Gaeltacht Lasú 2001 to re-establish the Gaeltacht Housing Grant scheme to support Irish language speakers and to help them live in the Gaeltacht and reverse the decline in Gaeltacht areas. This government has failed to enforce its own laws when it comes to rent regulation. We have hard data from the RTB showing that last year rents in existing tenancies, not new tenancies, not new stock, existing tenancies, where people haven't moved out of a tenancy, a new tenancy hasn't begun, existing tenancies were increased above the 2% allowable by law in every city in Ireland. 4.5% in Dublin City, 5% in Cork City, 5.4% in Waterford City, 5.5% in Limerick City, 6.1% in Galway City. The law flouted everywhere in terms of the 2% increases allowed in existing tenancies. Now, when I raised this with the Taoiseach recently in the Dáil, he basically said, well, we don't want to scare off investment. So is that the position of the government? You won't implement the law to protect renters from illegal rent increases because you're afraid of scaring off investment. Is that the situation, Minister? And let's be very, very clear, there's plenty of investment in private rental sector in other European countries where they actually implement their own laws on rent regulation. The countries with the largest rental sectors in Europe have rent regulation. So it's not that you cannot do it, it's your own law in any event, and you should be implementing it. If you implemented your own laws and rent regulation that are being flouted now, that you're not implementing, that would help protect some households from becoming homeless. But you choose not to do that. And this is a significant thing because several years ago there wasn't the clear evidence on this. The RTB wasn't collecting the data on rent increases in existing tenancies. You're collecting it now, and they have the hard data from the registrations of existing tenancies that they could go off and enforce the law. And instead the current situation is it's down to a renter to make a complaint to the RTB, who will then go off and investigate it. Now, how many renters do you think feel that they're in a position where they can make complaints against their landlord? Because obviously if they do make a complaint against their landlord, because protections for renters are so weak in this country, the landlord can of course issue them with a notice to quit and can evict them. So until that power imbalance is removed, you won't have renters coming forth in numbers to make complaints. But in any event, the state, through the RTB, is actually collecting the data showing these rent breaches that are putting households under huge pressure and making some households become homeless. So the state and the RTB isn't possession of that data that it could use to enforce its law. And yet, what do we hear from the government about enforcing this law? Nothing. I haven't heard anything from them about why they aren't enforcing the law here. So I'd like the government to explain that. When are they going to start enforcing their own rent regulation law to protect renters from illegal rent increases that you know are happening all over the country? And when you're going to protect households that are at risk of homelessness and are becoming homeless, and we've children growing up homeless now because you're not enforcing your own laws on rent increases, and because you're not bringing us into line with other European countries where renters who pay their rent are not evicted. In fact, the norm in a lot of other European countries is it's illegal to evict someone into homelessness, no matter what the circumstances, incidentally. They put a lot of effort into trying to prevent households that fall behind in rent payments from becoming homeless. We're not anywhere near that. We're in a situation where households that pay their rent on time are evicted into homelessness. So let's not kid ourselves that there aren't immediate things the government could do, like enforcing your own law on rent regulation. Very basic things that would actually make a massive difference to families and individuals throughout this country. Gurv Magat.